Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
On today's episode, we're going to find out why emotional science is not an oxymoron, how to get 43 experts to speak at your event for free, why you might want to brush up on your penmanship, and how to create your very own product or service category. To help us cover that and more, my very special guest today is Gabi Zijderveld. She is the CMO of Affectiva, an emotion measurement technology company that grew out of MIT's Media Lab in 2009. Gabi, welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to talk to you. We've had a chance. I've heard you speak via the CMO Club roundtables. And before we dive into how you essentially created a new tech category, let's go back a bit. You have a master's in art history from Utrecht University, which is in the Netherlands. Did you imagine?
Correct.
And you'd spend your career as a tech marketer in the United States?
No, not at all, actually. And it's kind of funny how it came about that I actually ended up in this career.
Yeah. So, I mean, what were, some of the things, how do you get from art history to tech marketing?
Well, my particular path, if you will, was a bit quirky in that I finished my master's degree in the Netherlands. I was actually going to start working on a PhD in art history. But at the time, the government had frozen all research funding. And the gist of it was that my professor came to me and said, hey, you have a great topic for a dissertation, but there's really no funding, so why don't you go on unemployment for 4 years and write that dissertation? And I was a bit outraged because that's certainly something I did not necessarily endorse nor want to do. So that kind of resets the table for me a bit in terms of, what do I do next? Now, luckily, even though I grew up for the most part in the Netherlands, I was born in the US, in New York City, and I have always walked around with dual citizenship. So this was kind of the perfect point in time where you could just decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to pack a couple of bags, I'm going to go and check out Boston and see if I like it. So that's exactly what I did. I right away found a job and actually ended up working at Harvard University in one of their libraries for a good year. And at the time, I built a social circle of friends, a few of whom worked in high tech. And then one day, one of them came up to me and said, we're hiring in our international marketing department. And this was a fast-growing technology company. And I said, okay, that's great, but I don't know anything about software nor anything about marketing. And she looked at me and she said, that doesn't matter. You're international. And I remember thinking to myself, what the heck does that mean?
That's so funny.
And she said, no, software and marketing, you can learn that on the job. We need people like you. You speak all these languages. You've traveled. You've worked with different cultures. You're the right fit for our company. Come talk to us. And I did. And 2 weeks later, I was working there. And that was about, probably 23 years ago at this point. And I've stuck in high tech ever since. A lot in roles such as product management roles. That's, I think, where really my sweet point is. But a lot of that was also product marketing and indeed international marketing and international channel management. But that's how it came about.
So it's funny. I was talking to a recent grad from Duke, which is my alma mater, and the other day, and he was concerned that his liberal arts background wouldn't be attractive to marketers. What would you tell him or those recruiters who really are just focused on marketing majors and people who've already sort of started down that path?
Oh, I would say absolutely not. I think people with a liberal arts degree make great business leaders, not just marketing, but business leaders across the board. I think there's a certain level of creativity and hands-on execution and problem solving that anyone in business needs. And those are skills you certainly develop in a liberal arts education. And not only that, from a company's perspective, you want to have diverse teams. it's only diversity that really fosters creativity and innovation. And if you build a team of people that are identical in terms of their background and maybe even their age and gender and education, then you're going to get the same results. So if you want to kind of mix it up, get creative, get innovative, you need people with diverse backgrounds that can come at problems and come with ideas from different perspectives. So I'm always fond of looking at resumes from people with a liberal arts background.
Yes, I'm totally with you there as a history major myself.
You did history. How cool.
Yes, and I still do history. Yeah. So when I'm sure this never happens to you, but if people were talking behind your back about you, and they're being positive, would they reference a particular superpower or something that you're really good at?
Getting stuff done.
So you can sort of mobilize a team and get stuff done. How did you develop that skill?
I think it was by, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost by force or requirement. Just being part, in my early days, in my early career, just being part of startups with very small teams, very small budgets. And I certainly am the kind of person that always has ideas of how to solve or address certain challenges. I often have ideas of new things that we should be doing. And especially when you're on a small team, you can come up with strategies and ideas until the cows come home, but it doesn't really matter anything unless you can actually execute it. So I've kind of, from the early days of my career, really learned to, yes, ideate and come up with strategies, but always just roll up my sleeves to get it done. And even if you don't have a big team of people around you that can help you with that, then getting kind of resourceful in building, an ecosystem or alliance partners around you. And that can even be people within the organization, right? That might be in completely different departments, but they like your idea or they like you personally, and you've built a good collegiate relationship with them, and they'll help you execute. So, yeah, just by kind of forced by situations I find myself in.
Force of will. Okay. So let's talk about Affectiva. You've been at the company for over 4 years after a nice sort of 7 years at IBM. What attracted you initially to this company?
Yeah, so really two things. A desire to go back to a startup. I had a really good 7 years at IBM where I did some really interesting things, but towards the end, it just got nagging at me again. I wanted to go back to a startup because I'd worked at companies like a Dragon Systems, the speech recognition company, in the early days. So there was that kind of broader desire, but then also a desire to work on building something new. I wanted to do something, ideally, that had never really been done before, and I wanted to work on intriguing or kind of extraordinary technology. I wouldn't go as far as saying, I wanted to go and change the world because, don't we all want to do that at a startup? It's getting a little bit cliche, but I did want to make an impact,
right,
building something new.
Okay.
So I started looking around at a lot of different companies. I met the team at Affectiva, especially meeting Rana El-Karoubi, at the time co-founder. She's now our CEO. She and I were completely on the same wavelength from day one. And I very much also respected the rest of the leadership team. And so it was also that connection that ultimately made me decide to work for Affectiva in addition to the technology.
Once again, proving that behind every great CMO is a strong CEO relationship.
Oh yeah,
this can't happen. So when you first got there, what were the initial challenges that you needed to tackle?
So the big challenge really was the following. As a vision for the company, the leadership, the founders, but pretty much every single employee there had this very fundamental and very strong belief that this technology, artificial emotional intelligence, as we now refer to it, that this technology would one day be ubiquitous. I mean, you think about it, detecting people's emotions and cognitive states, through technology is something that can indeed be applied to many different industries and in many different use cases. So there was always this really big vision. Yet, at the time when I joined the company, we were considered very much a niche vendor in the market research space within media and advertising, because the technology there was being used to basically test how people react to ads so that you can optimize your ad content.
Right.
On a side note, to date, that is actually still a very large market for us, or a very big part of our business, but it still is considered a, if you will, a niche use case. So the problem was, okay, so we have this technology, it's considered a niche thing. It's also being described in what I thought was very clunky ways, like I'll tell you more about that later. But the challenge was, how do you position this technology as something that has much broader applicability across industries and can indeed even one day be ubiquitous? And that was really a big challenge when I came on board, and the one I set out to tackle.
So essentially what I'm going to try to summarize is, so you get there, they have a sort of, they're in a niche, they're using it as sort of in a way that this whole holy grail of trying to sort of get people to understand, react emotionally to advertising and actually measure that and see it and put some concrete value, which is something that's been part of the industry of advertising for a long time. But you said, how do we make our vision bigger? How do we expand? Because if we want to grow the business, we have to grow the category, essentially. And that's what essentially Emotion AI really helped you do. So it was essentially a very large strategic vision.
Well, the strategic decision was to try and reposition the company as something that folks in other industries could better recognize, or maybe even better identify themselves with. Because also, mind you, just an example in this context, when I joined the company, the technology was actually referred to as automated facial coding. So what the heck is that, right? And on a side note, this is well-established terminology in the market research space, and they commonly still refer to this type of technology as automated facial coding. So fine, right? It works for that niche market. But when you think about this bigger vision that we had of humanizing technology, that one day our systems and apps and AI systems will be able to detect human emotions and human mental states and adapt in real time to those human states, automated facial coding, even for me joining the company, didn't really make that connection.
Interesting.
So it became also something as really fundamental. So how can we actually describe our technology, name our technology in a way that people actually understand what it does? And that's kind of a bit basic, right? So it all came down to articulating a clear value prop, and it wasn't clear.
Right. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break because I think that's a perfect place to do it. And then we're going to go into the details of how you got to that particular language and what others can learn from it. So stay with us.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back with my guest, Gabi from Affectiva. We've been talking about, you come into a company and you're given a category definition or a product definition. In this case, it was automated facial coding, which doesn't sound necessarily, first of all, what are we talking about? And second of all, why would I need it? So you recognize this as the challenge, and you come up with this term emotion AI, right? How did you first settle on, was there, you recognize that we have this challenge, we have to rename our category, our value proposition. Did you look at a bunch of options, and how did you come up with this particular expression of your value prop?
Oh, it certainly wasn't a type of, workshop market assessment or even bringing a branding company in and looking at a bunch of different options. It was not that at all. It was actually an evolution over a couple of years. So when I first came in, I started asking a lot of questions. So automated facial coding, what the heck is that? What does that mean? what do we do? And it's kind of that toddler reaction, right? Asking all the why questions. And at one point in time, several people said, well, we recognize emotions. We detect emotions. I'm like, aha, okay, well, that's simple. That's clear. So it's emotion recognition. Yeah. So why are we calling it facial coding? Yeah. Okay. Got it. So it was an evolution to becoming more descriptive. And then I spent a lot of time with key stakeholders in the company, including our CEO, who was already out there on the road a lot, talking at events and talking about this new kind of cutting edge technology. We talked a lot about what we refer to as our talk track. So how do we actually describe our technology in really simple terms? So it was that evolution. First, naming it in a way that people actually recognize what it is, and then thinking through how can you describe it in a snappy way so people understand what the value is that it describes. And at that point in time, we had not yet landed on emotion AI. That came a little bit later.
So you had emotion, recognize emotion as sort of, okay, this is a better way of sort of generically describing what we do. And then when you came up with emotion AI, was there this, aha, that's it? Or did you sort of throw it out there and then suddenly get a reaction to it and went, oh, it is it?
Okay, so this is what happened. At that point in time, we were again in this big AI wave, right? We all know AI is in a sense a bit of a hype. Every single new startup that comes to market with software has to be an AI company these days. So there's this AI wave, right? At the time I joined the company, we also, from a technology perspective, started using deep learning. So we've been a machine learning company all along, but suddenly we're building our own kind of architectures and neural networks. We're building deep learning-based models. We have massive amounts of data. So that all combined said that, yeah, credibly, we are really an AI company. We're doing everything an AI company should be. And I remember the CEO and I had a lot of conversations because we wanted to be careful not to be seen as a bunch of folks that wanted to ride that AI wave and basically hyperbolically refer to ourselves as AI. Yes, we were really doing AI. And in the meantime, she had already done a TED Talk that was very successful. We started getting a lot of media interest in this emotion recognition technology. And I vividly remember she and I were in a room prepping for an O'Reilly keynote that she was delivering a few years ago. And she said, I really want to start referring to our technology as artificial emotional intelligence because we are building emotional intelligence in technology. And it is artificial intelligence that we're building. It is AI. So I'm like, fair enough. That's exactly what we're doing. But artificial emotional intelligence, wow, that's a mouthful. And we were like, okay, what can we name this? And it was kind of jokingly where I first said, well, you have to have something snappy and short, something that could even fit in a hashtag, like hashtag emotion AI. And we fell silent and we looked at each other and we were like, emotion AI.
The aha moment, right? It was that
aha moment.
And the fact that the CEO was in the room kind of solidified it, right? Because at that point you go,
yeah.
I like it. She likes it. Okay, peace out. We've got this. So you have this idea. Now it's a hashtag. It's very simple. People will grab onto it. How do you then go and sort of spread the word? Did you work on it internally first and get employees excited about it? Okay, so how's that work?
Oh yeah, so even though this kind of sounds a bit serendipitous how we got to it, and it certainly was an evolution over time before we landed there, the way we then executed was very deliberate and very thought through. So there's a number of things we did. First of all, we really revisited what I referred to earlier as our talk track. That was basically our 2 or 3 page document that describes in various ways what we do, what the use cases are, what the value prop is, all the proof points, sparklers, data points that come with it, right? So we completely updated that talk track. We also put some definitions in place as to why we are an AI company, why this is artificial emotional intelligence. Then our CEO delivered this particular keynote, and of course we updated her presentation, all the slides that went with it, and we made clear to, as we always did, promote that event and start, even on social media, indeed start using that hashtag emotion AI. we also said to ourselves, well, let's just test this, right? We have this keynote coming up. Let's test how this resonates and see if people kind of gel with that concept. It was really interesting. She delivered that keynote, and a couple of weeks after the keynote, she bumped into an investor who had heard her talk. And the investor said, I love what you guys are doing. I've been following the emotion AI space forever. And she came back to the office and she's like, Gabi, you're not going to believe it.
Oh, that's
This
hilarious.
is what that guy said. He's been following the emotion AI space. It's a thing. And I'm like, yeah, we're building a new category here. This is a new frontier in AI that hasn't been built yet, and we're building it. And that's how we kind of got tuned into the fact, hey, we're really building a new technology category here.
So at any point, were you nervous? Did you say, oh, what if, what we're sort of there? Usually in some of these things where you're actually doing something that is different than what everybody else is doing in, naming category, there's a moment or two where it's like, is this going to fly? And, or there's a naysayer who might try to shoot it down. Was there anything that happened that sort of gave you pause before you went all in?
A very good question. Not entirely, because the thing we realized all along, and that I realized all along, what do we have to lose? Right? We will always have automated facial coding. We will always have our work in the market research space because we were recognized as the market leader in that space. We're not giving that up. So there wasn't much that we had to lose in that sense. There were naysayers, even within the company. There's a lot of our, a number of our technical folks were very skeptical because, AI, everything's AI these days, right?
Right.
But then we started seeing this getting picked up in the press. So already at that point in time, we were getting a tremendous amount of press attention. Also because our CEO, Rana El-Kayoubi, has a very unique profile. She's a female scientist who became a CEO. She's a Muslim American, young woman, very articulate, charismatic. So people wanted to speak with her. We're doing technology that's kind of cutting edge and building things never done before. So people wanted to talk to us about our technology. And at that point in time, we just started pounding the pavement and kept referring to it as emotion AI, emotion AI. We published a lot ourselves. Our CEO was writing columns, we're posting blogs, and we just kept repeating it. And then it started sticking.
There you go. I love it. So we're going to take another break. And then when we come back, we're going to sort of go through some of the steps that other people can think about when creating a program. When you next time you have an opportunity to create a category from scratch. And I say that somewhat jokingly, but because you may not have that, but you do have an opportunity as a chief marketing officer to redefine the way people think about your business and the category you're in. And that is the essence of strategy, is really finding a unique way of talking about your business. All right, we'll be right back.
Hey, it's Drew. I was at a conference the other day and somebody looked at my saw lapel pin and said, what's up with that? And I said, well, what's the one thing that marketing has always had to do? Forget digital, forget all this stuff. What is the one marketing imperative? And he looked at me and went, cut through. And I went, yes, ding, 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 ding. That's right. Cut through. That is what marketing must do. And it's not just cutting through the clutter, although that's really important, because if your marketing doesn't cut through the clutter, it's like the proverbial tree in the forest that falls and nobody hears it. But it's also cutting through the crap and the processes that inhibit innovation. We've been working a lot lately with some CMOs to help them cut through the crap and get at the essence of what is their big idea. And how can they make a case to expand that idea across their business? That, to me, is cutting through.
Okay, we're back, and my guest is Gabi Zijderveld, who is the CMO of Affectiva. And we've been talking about how she and the CEO worked together to create essentially a new category, this category of emotion AI. At the beginning of the show, I promised the folks that they would learn how you could get 43 events to 43 people to speakers, experts to show up at an event and speak for free. Can you talk about that event a little bit and what the thinking was behind it and how you pulled that off?
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, we have kind of established this emotion AI technology category, right? We're seeing our competitors pick up this language. We're seeing Gartner now finally put out a report referencing the emotion AI landscape, right? So now it's a thing. And at that point in time, we realized, okay, we should really now do our own annual conference. Because also at that point in time, we had built a lot of use cases and proof points around our technology, and we could actually talk in more detail about how this was being used. So even this past September, we did our second annual Emotion AI conference. One thing that's important to explain here is that for us, in terms of advancing this new technology category of Emotion AI, it was critical that we build an ecosystem of supporters and kind of friends of the company around ourselves. And these were our clients, these were our business partners, these were also industry analysts, a number of reporters that we had built strong relationships that were now big promoters of the company, the Boston technology ecosystem. So we've built this network and these relationships with all these key influencers around us. And then when we set out to organize this event, of course, we spent a lot of time thinking about the theme. This year's theme was very kind of related to current topics. It was trust in AI and how can you foster trust in AI? How do you actually build that? And we started tapping into our network. We just started asking influential thought leaders across industries if they would be game to speak about their work in the context of trust in AI. We did not require of them to promote Affectiva. This was not going to be the Affectiva show. It was going to be an industry show. You invite a few people. They recommend other people you should invite to speak. And it just spiraled. And next thing you knew, we had 43 speakers lined up for a one-day event. We had 2 tracks. We did keynote presentations and panel discussions. It was amazing. And we did not pay anyone a single dime. Just the nonprofit organizations, there were a few, we just covered their train rides from New York and their hotel. That was it.
And I love that story for any number of reasons, but fitting into the sort of the CATS framework that I use to describe highly successful chief marketing officers, courage to be unique, artfully tell the story as you've already described, and then thoughtfully, and this is where I think this event is so thoughtful, you picked a really interesting topic that was bigger than your brand. It was really about making sure that we're responsible corporate citizens in this very emerging technology. And then because it wasn't about Affectiva, because it was about this larger issue, you were able to get these folks to attend, but you had also already laid a lot of groundwork. It wasn't like suddenly these were new people and you were asking. You had built the network beforehand. That to me is also sort of one of those artful things that forward-thinking CMOs do, is that they think about their network, they communicate with it, they build it out there. Okay, so one of the things that I recall from a CMO Club, I think, roundtable that you did, you talked about sending handwriting thank you notes. What was that about?
Oh, yeah. So you build this network, right? You have these relationships with all these people. And you really need to personalize these relationships. You need to also give them TLC and make them feel you're special, or at a minimum that you really appreciate the effort they're undertaking to travel to your event, spend the time to prepare and speak at the event, right? So there's a number of things we did. Prior to the event, we would promote every single speaker. We actually had our summer marketing intern create PowerPoint slides with a headshot of every single, for every single speaker. It was one PowerPoint slide. It had their headshot on it, and then Emotion AI Summit speaker, and then their title and the topic that they were going to speak about. We created images out of that so that those folks could also tweet about it. We heavily promoted every single speaker. For some of them that we had stronger relationships, we connected with their marketing department so that they could amplify the fact that, their CTO was speaking at our event. And we were quite successful having a number of those folks kind of, help us promote our event. Then the evening before the event, and we've done this before and it's extremely successful, we hosted a VIP dinner for all speakers. So every single speaker was invited. Our CEO kind of hosted the dinner. We had a little networking cocktail hour to precede it. And then people got to know each other. They got to network. They got to build connections and generally just have a fun evening the day before the event. And it was at that dinner that we gave every speaker a little gift. We actually had an artist at the event, and we had the artist commission a special image or a special drawing that we gave to every single speaker, a box of chocolates, and a handwritten card. Now you can imagine 43 speakers, and the CEO and I have to do handwritten cards. That is a bit time consuming, but you will not believe how many people were blown away by the handwritten cards. We got a number of emails from folks that said it was such an amazing event, and wow, gave us a handwritten card. That's emotional intelligence at work, one person said.
There you go. On brand, a little bit of extra effort. Just make sure you have decent penmanship. I don't know about you, but I find because I handwrite so little, my handwriting was never perfect, but oh my, it is definitely degraded. So yes,
I hear you.
You never know. So the last part of the formula for success that I certainly prescribe is science, in the sense that you bring some measurement to your programs and so forth. What were you, how did you measure the effectiveness of this program? And I imagine it's multidimensional, but talk about sort of larger measures and then maybe some specific measures like the event itself and how you sort of measure the success of your programs.
Yeah, there's a number of different measures that we use. Now, these days we are very active in the automotive industry, where our technology can be used to detect driver drowsiness and distraction and also measure the passenger experience in the cabin, right? So in that market, you're not talking about volume sales. It is a very discrete list of clients that we work with. So in terms of marketing, it's less so focused on lead gen as it is on keeping us current and front of mind with these accounts. So we also, a measure of success that we had is how many of our automotive invitees actually showed up to the event. And at the event, we also had a good number of automotive demos. And then we also measured and tracked how many of our clients got to take these demos, so that if we missed one or two, we can, of course, plan in the future to make sure that they see our latest and greatest work. We, again, still to this day, get a tremendous amount of press activity. So we did a lot of measurements around coverage and reach of coverage. And then our PR agency also uses a listening tool that allowed us to identify who the key influencers were that were talking about us around the time of our summit. So that was kind of another measure we took into account, because it allowed us to identify, new voices out there that we yet weren't aware of, so that we could better tap into them going forward. Then there were other measures. We pride ourselves, this is maybe not a typical marketing measure, mind you, but we pride ourselves a lot on helping to foster diversity. We wanted to make sure that of our 43 speakers, we had a good number of women speaking. So we also tracked how many female speakers we had. It was about a third. We wanted half, which is really difficult to do, but we got a third, which is still admirable for a tech event. We also tracked how many of them had PhDs, what industries they came from. So a number of different angles that we measured results on.
So, and I'm assuming that all of those were good, and I can hear some CEOs and CFOs saying, well, those are nice soft measures of the program. What about sales? What about revenue generation, or at least, pipeline and pipeline velocity. How did this overall program, not just the events, but the notion of emotion AI help drive the company's revenue?
Yeah, so this is interesting because, again, as I said, in the market that we're in right now, it's not volume sales. It's not building a massive pipeline. It first and foremost was, in the early days, making sure that people at those target companies knew who we were and what we did. And that was where we focused a lot when we first launched our automotive solution. And then now that our sales and biz dev team have established relationships with all those target accounts, it sounds very counterintuitive to most marketers, but sales is now telling me we don't need new leads. We don't need new companies to work with. We need to advance these relationships because going forward, these are our customers that we will get into production vehicles with. So now we're at a stage that we need to advance those relationships. We need to forward those relationships. So there's a lot more effort being spent on product marketing, making sure that we have kind of technical content, that we market technical content, that we are very clear about the use cases, because many of the companies, the automotive companies that we work with, are still, to a certain extent, looking to us for guidance on how this technology can be applied in next generation vehicles that might even be on the road 5 to 10 years from now. So it's way more focused on product marketing and on account management than it is on building a pipeline and new lead generation.
Right.
And that makes sense.
Oh, it does. And these are, first of all, it's a relatively finite group of folks, is one.
Right.
And they're very, very large. So, the impact that this will have, it's a long sales cycle. So all of that makes sense. Okay. So as we're approaching the end of the show, and I've try to get these shows sort of compact so that folks can actually complete an episode on the thing. And I'm going to do something that you take some words that you provided, and also so we will link to your LinkedIn profile. And on the top of your profile is a terrific article that summarizes how to create your own category and what to look for. And those 4 steps was naming the term. Obviously, in your case, it was emotion AI. Define your term. And what I loved about your little article is the keeping it simple and making sure that you're using words that people can understand. And so I think that's really important, even in a very complex technology thing. Use the term everywhere. And so from a renegade thinking standpoint, one of the things we're really pushing our clients to do is narrow what they talk about and their message, and then go broad with it, right? Because you can't be known for everything, particularly in the case of your company, right? It's a small company, but I think it's true for most companies. And so the great thing about having a category name like this is you can put all your energy into building it. And it's not just saying it, it's showing it like you did with a handheld thing. So love that. Use it everywhere. And then build and promote the proof points. Obviously, you can't just say something and without making it real. And that's where the actions that a brand do, the stuff that you do to show that it's real, really matters. So again, I'll link to that article in the show notes. In thinking about all that we've talked about so far, and we've got a bunch of CMOs listening, is there any other sort of one do and one don't, 2 do's and a don't that you would like to share to help wrap up the show?
It really, for me, comes down to, and I've seen this over and over again at every single tech company I've worked, is you need to spend a lot of time really understanding why it is that what you do matters. Who cares? And why will they spend money buying it? And it all essentially comes down to, for example, you're a services or a product company. How can your product make your client's company better? Or make, if it's B2B2C, for example, make their customers more successful or help their individual careers? You have to think this through, and you have to be able to articulate that crisply. And not only that, you have to make sure that every single person in your company is aligned around that all your key stakeholders are on the same page and are able to speak about that consistently. And in my mind, and what I've seen in the past 20 years, that is just fundamental, and you see it go wrong so often. You know, we've all been to check out a company's website, and you look at it and you're like, I have no clue what these people do. And that's not necessary. Just think it through. It's the basics, right?
Right. But so, okay, get your strategy right. Get your CEO on board. Sell it internally first. You know, if there are naysayers, bring them around. It's okay to have skeptics. Yeah. That'll make you smarter, but you need to bring them around. And sometimes you just have to show it to them in action, which is what happened there. Keep it simple from a messaging standpoint. Focus on that. And then this sort of notion of having an ecosystem as a way of thinking about spreading the word so that you're not just doing it alone, I think is brilliant. And then find a little personal touch, goes a long way, particularly when it circles back to the message that you're saying, which is, I talked about the beginning of the show that emotion science was not an oxymoron. Emotions matter in marketing, emotion matters, and obviously in your product, and you brought those two together. So, Gabi, I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much. I loved your questions, and I love speaking with you about this stuff. Thanks again.
That's awesome. Okay, well, to all of the listeners of the show, thank you again for being dedicated listeners. I know it's work. You have lots of choices to listen to. So already given you a quick summary, but if you think about it and want to share this, sharing is caring. Feel free to share this episode with a friend, particularly someone in the tech startup space. I hope they'll find it inspiring. And until next time, keep those Renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.